All right, everyone, it is Address the Sess. It is a very, very special episode. We have many well-known guests that are going to be joining us. And first thing off, I'd like to say this episode of Address the Sess is being brought to you by Full Sail University. And this is going to be a fascinating discussion. We're going to focus on what has been, I wouldn't even say it's slow brewing, but it really kind of hit a fever pitch today. And this is the issue that's been happening on YouTube with a lot of YouTubers, in particular the ones that are dealing with video games, suddenly getting strikes and having their videos taken down, and they're a point of contest over some issues that have changed very recently. I think there's a lot of uncertainty as to what has actually happened to cause this dragnet, I think is probably the best word. And we have people that are both YouTubers, that are on the developer side, that are on the PR side, and of course some of you guys out there try to get a sense of both what is going on, what this means, and hopefully that there will be a quick and easy resolution, because there are many people whose livelihoods who really have established themselves. We're finding that there may be some very rough going in at least the near future, if not something far longer and far worse. Nick Robinson is here with us. Everyone say hello, Nick.
Hi. Hey, websites. Hey, Internet.
And just so you know, because we have so many guests, we will be rolling some people in, but not with the level of frequency that we do in traditional Address the Sesses. We're going to be taking a lot of questions from the chat, so stay in there. Ask some questions. Nick is going to do whatever he can to watch the flow of them come through. But what we do ask is that when we do bring you in, that you understand that we only want to talk about this YouTube issue. So if it's Xbox versus PS4, if it's my thoughts on Fallout 4 being kind of announced on a great Kotaku article by the one and only Jason Schreier, we can do that next week. Right now, it's all about the YouTube stuff because this is a fascinating, if not distressing, topic. Nick?
Yeah.
Ready to bring in our first friend?
Sure. Who would you like to hear from first today, Adam?
Well, let's bring in, he's been on the show before. Many of you know him as TotalBiscuit. I also know him as TotalBiscuit, also as John Bain. How are you doing, man? Oh, unmute yourself.
Uh-oh.
The button. There's the button.
Even the great TotalBiscuit fell.
Sorry, we forgot to warn you about that.
I figured it out. That's wonderful. Yes, it's been a really interesting few days, and there's that old Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times, and frankly, I wish I didn't.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that one. Now, to be clear, as in my situation, as with yours, we both pretty much ply our trades on YouTube, but you have yet to be impacted by any of this.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, well, I would say a lot of us, but that wouldn't be fair. Some of us definitely dodged the bullet on this one, and my understanding of it, and this is particularly based on the recent statement by Google that was made on this issue, is that this is only affecting affiliate partners, not managed partners. So we're not seeing hide nor hair of it, perhaps as managed partners, but a lot of the other guys are getting absolutely drowned in it.
So let's go through some of this definition. I think with some of our other guests, we might even get more clarity on what that line is. We're seeing MSN, and we're seeing no, not MSN.
Oh God, it's back! No.
No.
MSN Messenger, finally.
Yes, it is not. It is not. But what affiliate is, and what a managed partner is, and probably the most important thing is what is a partner to then have these kind of declamations of partnerness that can occur.
All right, well, the basic idea of YouTube is that if you want to make money on YouTube, you've got to be a YouTube partner. Now, the partnership program has been around for a long time. Initially, it was a case of you would partner directly with YouTube. They take a massive chunk of your revenue, and in turn, you are able to run ads from their AdSense inventory, which means that you can make money by running an ad at the front of your video. Networked partners are a little different because what Google basically did is they delegated this ability to partner people and content to a set of networks that had companies that were built up to manage large numbers of partners, and they were supposed to also be responsible for keeping them in line. So
and this would kind of be Machinima. There's actually Vision 3 is one of these as well. We have many partners. I am not one of them. I'm kind of right inside the company.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Rev3 is an MCN. I can't remember what that stands for, but it's just a
multi-channel network.
That's the one.
I learned it today.
It seems ultimately a little bit redundant. I mean, we wouldn't have one network with one channel. That would be a little bit silly and pointless. But yeah, MCN is the term that people are using right now. And up to this point, until very recently, the the copyright permissions were basically blanket under the network. The network was supposed to be taking responsibility for any copyright infringement done by its partners. They were supposed to police that internally and keep it off of Google's back, right? Now, these partners have been split into two groups, managed partners and affiliate partners, and it's the affiliates that are getting hit with this stuff.
Now, in terms of the affiliate, but the affiliate is still affiliated with the managed partner. That's where it seems to be a little bit unclear, kind of where, within some of these networks, where that dividing line is being drawn.
Well, technically, they're still contracted to the network because they signed an agreement to produce that content, and that means the network's getting a cut of that revenue. The strange thing about the affiliate idea versus managed is that the affiliate is technically taking responsibility for his own copyright at that point, and they're dealing with a lot of this stuff, which is why this new YouTube monetization review is coming into effect. Now, monetization review is something that was happening to unnetworked partners before, and it's a reason why a lot of people were joining networks.
Got it. And the monetization review goes back to the fact that you are making money off of your videos on a platform that you yourself do not own.
Exactly. So every now and again, they do what was basically a random airport check, only a hell of a lot more random, as in you're wearing a beard and a turban and you're ticking kind of random. So what ended up happening every now and again, by which several times a week, is these videos ended up being flagged for monetization review, which means that you could not monetize those videos until it had passed review. This could take anywhere between a couple of hours to several days. This is now what affiliates are being subject to, as well as this massive content ID dredge.
And I think the one thing is obviously copyright issues and YouTube have existed since pretty much the minute YouTube became something that most people were aware of. You can't just rip up an entire movie and put it up there. You are violating the copyright. But what we're looking at here is something far more granular, far more nebulous. And when we get to some of our other guests, I think rather vague in terms of who really owns the copyright and if that claim is even coming from the proper licensor or the owner outright.
That's becoming a huge problem right now, and no doubt a bunch of these guys here will tell you about claims that they have received from companies they don't even recognize. We're not talking about claims coming from EA. We're not talking about claims coming from Ubisoft. We're talking about claims coming from these random third-party companies that seem to have absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with either the soundtrack or the actual visual assets being displayed.
On that note, John, hey, Nick, let's go ahead and bring in Fraser here.
Yeah, sure. Let's see.
Because if there's someone I've noticed today who has had one hell of a story when it comes to this, it's this gentleman here.
Yeah, Fraser, I think, has the unique perspective of being a partner outside of a multi-channel network longer. Or I guess what I mean is he's been a non-MCN partner, so he's already used to dealing with Content ID on a regular basis. Is that right?
Fraser, oh gosh, did we just lose him?
Uh-oh.
That is, oh dear. Let's see if we can figure out a way that we
can all go home now.
All right.
Get it back in here.
All right. Let's see.
I think we have him right here, but you know what? Let's go over and find
scoot one down and talk to JP.
JP.
All righty. Hopefully this doesn't make anything explode this time.
I think.
All right.
Am I exploding? Are we good?
No, you're not. Now, JP,
Yes,
actually, I'm sorry. I just had a momentary brain fart as I've been trying to kind of get my head wrapped around all of this. You have had a number of videos up,
right,
which I think like almost 80% of them have suddenly just gotten hit in the last 3 days.
I wouldn't. 80% is maybe a little bit high. 83
Okay.
is the actual number of videos. I think I have around 800 on my channel. But it's
okay, so it's 10%. But that's let's just say for someone who is earning money to see 10% of your inventory suddenly not be able to you can't flip it. That's
right.
bad.
Exactly. They are still viewable by the public. However, none of that money for however long they're down. My network Polaris is helping me recover that, but if they're down for 4 or 5 days, that's 4 or 5 days worth of revenue on those 83 videos, and who knows if there's more. I think the last flag was around 2 o'clock today, and that's the largest amount of time between flags, actually, so it might have stopped. But the interesting thing is, it makes no sense because there are 260 videos. What's being flagged in these videos is the intro. The intro is about 30 seconds long, and the audio comes from Video Copilot, which uses a pro score within that intro. And so 83 videos out of these 260 with the same identical one-to-one intro have been flagged by, I think it's ProScores or Video Copilot, specifically with this one song in mind. And the other ones are just kind of coasting along. So
okay, so
it doesn't make
you're
sense.
not even seeing consistency in terms of if X was bad here, why isn't X bad over here?
Right. Last night at around this time, I had anticipated that all 260 videos would be claimed, and I would kind of be screwed for that in particular video, or for that in particular series. But it looks like it stopped. So I don't know if they just got tired and they're like, we've screwed this guy enough. Let's move on to the next one. But I'm not sure what's really going on with that.
Okay, so the music, which seems to be not just with you, with almost everybody, which seems to be the actual point of contention, not the game video itself. And we have both Nigel Lowry from Devolver Digital and Stephanie Schaub, one of the best PR person out there right now, who can speak to sort of that complication. But did you have a licensing agreement for the music? Were you in the clear to be using this music?
I do, and on their website, I mean, it blatantly states, what about royalties? And it says that they are all royalty-free. So it's a little bit concerning to me that I'm getting flagged on YouTube for using royalty-free music or pro scores that I've then edited a little bit, which is totally within the legalities of it all. So it's a little bit weird.
And the other question I have is, and John, I would love for you to jump in here, and I think this is going to be one of the bigger conversations. I am currently under the impression that what you're getting flagged by is not an individual working for that organization, but really by some sort of automated scan that organization, the Pro Music Group, has kind of signed on with Google, saying like, hey, if you find any of this, I want you to go after them.
Right. This is where things get really murky, because we saw, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, Blizzard coming out and saying on all their official Twitter feeds, please counterclaim this immediately because we have no idea why this is happening, basically. And I got in touch with Blizzard directly after Northern Lion actually had one of his Hearthstone videos flagged, which is definitely one of the more curious ones, because Blizzard has a blanket agreement on their website which states that, yes, you can monetize your videos as long as you don't put them behind a paywall. So as long as you're not selling them, you're totally fine. But Blizzard obviously uses the Content ID system in some respect, but they were not the ones that initiated the claim. It almost seems like YouTube did a blanket sweep using a set of Content ID matches without the permission of the publishers and just went absolutely ham on everything, which is really disconcerting.
Were you able to confirm that Blizzard owns the rights to that music? It wouldn't be surprising to me. It's that kind of a company that composes their own music and they own it.
I would think so. It's very unlikely that they wouldn't, honestly, especially since they actually post the soundtrack on their own website, so it seems unlikely that they wouldn't have massive rights to that. The strange thing is we don't know if it was music that triggered it, because while music was mentioned by JP, it's also trailers and cutscenes that are very easy for this automated system to match. Because, I mean, it's a robot doing this. It's not a person. So matching static visuals and static audio is far easier than matching dynamic gameplay.
To confirm that, even one of the videos that I did have claimed was one of the other shows that I do about video games and whatnot. We had a trailer from E3 for, I think it was the Final Fantasy 15 trailer that Square put out at the convention for public consumption, and the video gets flagged.
I've had something similar happen to me as well. Square's
pretty bad about it.
There are restrictions that seem to be coming with a game for review from Square that kind of preclude us from actually pulling any video at all because we don't want to deal with the headache. This happened to us around the time of GDC, where the Battlefield 4 trailer, gameplay, demo, whatever it was, we got hit with that. That was one of the rare instances, and what we believe happened on our end is it wasn't just an audio, it was video. It was so particular, and we were unaware that we weren't allowed to show it, being a publicity trailer thing. That's a whole other discussion we can have later.
Right.
Please, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, before we bring the next person in, do you want to just see something that might be going on in chat that might be kind of pertinent to this part of the discussion?
We've got a good question on Google Plus from Brandon Jones, who asks, do you think Twitch will become the new place where all of the YouTube gaming watchers eventually go?
Well, that's... sorry.
I wish one of our other guests was here. He pretty much said that he was living on Twitch right now. JP, what are you doing in this tight time?
A lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, my I guess revenue comes from both YouTube and Twitch. I'd say it's around 50-50. So I can still exist and live day to day, at least 2 months out, because that's how all these companies pay. But I'm not too worried about it because I am lucky enough to have a network still that will kind of fight for me. But I would guess that the majority of people are probably just going to head to Twitch. I think that what they're offering right now in terms, if you can get there, in terms of the subscription and whatnot, that's probably the next best place until all this kind of settles.
Well, I guess the dark side of this, and John, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, is the circumstances that brought Google to have to kind of appease copyright holders is not something that Twitch would necessarily be immune to.
That's
Absolutely not.
True.
Yeah. So far, it seems like they've done a pretty good job of dodging it, which is actually shocking because Twitch
really
has
is.
an awful lot of partners that play a lot of copyright music on their streams all the time. Now, I'm a firm believer in saying, look, you know, this is against the law technically, but they're not coming to listen to the music. You know, it's a common sense idea. This is something that will easily apply to gameplay footage as well. But they've somehow been dodging all of that, and I'm not sure how that's happened. Maybe they just haven't been noticed yet. Apparently,
yeah. There's always been
waving his
rumblings.
hand up there, so maybe he knows.
Well, on the subject of Twitch stuff, we actually did, against all odds, get Fraser back into the call.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
So let's see if we can get him to unmute himself. And Fraser, just to catch you up, the question that was asked from a Google Plus commenter was, do you think Twitch will become the new sort of home for gaming on the internet if YouTube keeps going in this direction?
So somebody's going to probably fill that need. Somebody needs to, and this is where I expected that MCNs, if we've coined that term now, right? We've all decided
Yes,
that.
All right. I don't like it. But you
So,
have it.
so that is what I initially thought that these networks were supposed to do, that they would be the paragons to represent fair use, and they would defend the partners under their wings. And supposedly, as this is all played out, YouTube has acknowledged that no, they aren't keeping a look on their flock, and it's time to reel them in. If they are only willing to protect what are they calling them? Managed partners?
Yeah,
Yeah.
managed.
Then somebody is going to fill that need. And I think that Twitch has probably been establishing pretty close relationships with, we've seen the PS4 and Xbox One integration, that they probably already have this in place. But my worry is that the approach that these the big players like Xbox and PlayStation have been making to Twitch is that they're hoping that they will be able to maybe get in on this game themselves and like legitimize it themselves and make it part of their own, which could stymie the efforts for us to monetize as video game content creators.
Yeah, I mean, we're already talking about the fact that I don't believe you can archive your footage from PS4, if I recall correctly. The streaming capabilities from there are limited in some way already. They've also mentioned the idea that a developer-by-developer basis is in place for you to be able to block things like specific cutscenes or specific levels if you don't want them shown. So
Right,
there are already
but what should be
restrictions
kept
there.
in mind is that anybody who's using those apps through the PS4 are unpartnered with Twitch. I'm not sure everybody realizes that Twitch does have a partner program itself. You can start streaming immediately, but in order to monetize on there, you do need to be approved.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, pretty much that's it.
Now, Fraser, you've been running some videos in the past couple of days that have been really kind of perfectly encapsulates kind of like where the issues are here. I wanted to get your thoughts on how much agency does Google have in this? How much agency do the MCNs have in this? How much of this is coming from what when this first started and I was coming up to speed, this really sounded like the music industry. You know, like kind of like that, like, you know, we are just going to protect what little we have left because it's being chipped away left and right, no matter how kind of inane or damaging it might be. How do you sort of survey the various players in this and where the responsibilities lie?
So when I saw that Nintendo, who has been extremely aggressive in the content ID matching, as far as the content ID system has gone so far, I've seen it's usually almost exclusively music identification that has been licensed for games. Nintendo was the first real one that seemed to come in themselves. I think I once saw EA claim something for Mass Effect, but Nintendo came in and aggressively flagged everything, and they've stated that they're protecting their IP. And that is understandable because you'll probably know that in copyright law, it's use it or lose it, protect it or lose it, and that if they are seen with inaction, it can be construed as condoning contracts or actions that they haven't fully come to understand yet.
And I think what also might be a little bit unique with Nintendo, and I'm looking forward to talking to Nigel since he deals with some of these aspects. Nintendo, by nature of the company, and kind of what we were talking about with John with Blizzard, they really own all of their audio. So, and it's not even just the music in a Nintendo game. You're talking about the sound that goes with Mario's jump. All of that is created in-house. It's not licensed. They didn't have someone kind of deal with them. They have a lot more latitude to be that kind of single-handed and aggressive.
Yeah, they very specifically have been using those sounds. They've gone out of their way to the content ID system is just a tool. It doesn't really matter whether the music was licensed for them or not. They don't really care in that sense. Yeah, it's interesting because I've seen companies like Konami who have that they have their own in-house band that almost produces all of the music for their games. They actually do identify content on YouTube. But they immediately release claims when requested. But Nintendo always reinstates claims in my experience so far.
And you know what? Both JP and Fraser, so if we can talk through it, and to the extent you've dealt with it, John, what is the process of getting that claim released? I've heard some stories, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that Google's at least trying to
praying probably is the best way to
make a 3.5 million view video that basically obliterates the company is a pretty good start. But you don't really want to go nuclear when it comes to that. And strange thing about that video was it only came out because it was last resort. We'd exhausted all of the possibilities of getting it sorted out without going through the YouTube copyright system, because that takes a long time. The standard thing to do is to issue a counterclaim. And usually people will use the term, I believe this claim was made in error.
That's like the golden term, yeah.
Yeah, it gets someone to look at it. That's the thing. Using anything else can actually get you rejected. Before I was told by the network basically how to do things, I had to make a counterclaim on one of my Shining Force 3 videos. Yes, a 20-year-old Sega Saturn game, because Sega decided, you know what, we're going to obliterate you for this. And they actually rejected my claim under fair use. They rejected it, which is actually insane, but I got it sorted out through, well, nuking Sega. But regardless, that's the process you really have to go through, and that's really the only option you have outside of naming, shaming, and trying to force the company to sort it out. I mean, you can email them, but good luck and see if they actually read it.
If I'm not mistaken, the Shining Force thing was a weird case because their purpose in doing that, if I'm not mistaken, was to be at the top of search results for Shining Force because they were doing a re-release, and so they were kind of using it to gain
illegal.
YouTube search.
It was illegal.
And I've even seen instances like that, which could become part of a discussion towards the end of this. But John, or anyone here, assuming that Google is working at its most efficient best, and you're filing the counterclaim, how long can that take? And do you have any way to kind of nudge that thing along, or do you just kind of say like counterclaim and just hope that someone somewhere is actually assisting you?
You're just hoping. I mean, they give you an estimated date, and most of the time, in my experience, that's about 30 days after you file it. So.
Oh wow.
It's lengthy.
It took one of my videos a month that was claimed. It was the E3 video. It was claimed once by EA, then once by Nintendo. EA ended up taking it away. Nintendo kept it on, so the video is still not. You can't monetize the video, but it takes about 30 days, and even then, you have to get pretty lucky to be able to have it taken away in the first place. You have to use kind of like what John was saying with the golden term, so that actually someone does take a look at it, and it doesn't just get thrown to a system. And then you just have to hope that someone's on your side that day, which is really unfortunate.
The macro that I use for the purpose of trying to get fair use claim is I say this is an original production and transformative work that includes fair use of footage and music originally composed and licensed for the video game, insert game name here, for the purpose of parody and review. And I've had mixed results, and it really depends on the company. And like JP was saying, up to 30 days, a lot of these companies, and I consider this to be a bit of a jerk move, will wait the full 30 days just to reinstate the claim.
Yep.
I mean, there's two things. I want to talk a little bit about fair use. I am not a lawyer. My wife is, and First Amendment law and stuff like that is, just because of video games is something I followed. fair use is such a dangerous and nebulous area that it really isn't something that you can kind of, it's not like a jacket of protection. It's, you know, your best hope, but it really does require almost a tacit agreement by all parties that what you're doing is fair. And I think, and so the point is, with these claims, or if there was to be legal action that was taken afterwards, to me it's reminiscent of the owner move-in evictions that are running rampant here in San Francisco, where they buy, you know, someone buys your apartment building, they say, hey, I'm moving in grandma, you got to move out. Yes, you can contest that because maybe grandma isn't moving in, but you're currently doing it without a house. That, you know, it just they kind of win as a corporation with the legal means that, you know, as fair and as valid a contest as you guys might have, it's not one that you can really kind of withstand for very long, you know, without income.
Right. The window of relevance for a game is not always longer than 30 days, is I think an essential point. Like, by the time that lifts, no one might be talking about that game anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, this is very pertinent for any kind of critique or review content, which is why it's super harmful. And the problem with the system is really simply this. Fair use is what you swing back with. It's what you retaliate with after you've already been struck in the face. What we need is a defense that stops this from happening to begin with. The burden of proof should be on the accuser, which it is in pretty much every other form of law on the planet. And yet here it's not. They don't have to prove anything. We're the ones who have to prove that we're legitimately using it, which is, and it takes it down in the meantime.
And I think,
go ahead.
I mean, and this also highlights, and one of the reasons why this is even tougher is that actually all of us are applying the majority, if not all of our trade, on a privately owned system that doesn't have to hew as strictly to, say, you know, proper censorship comes from the government, and there's sort of a much clearer means of contesting that. And I've, you know, ever since I kind of started this gig, it's always been this moment of concern that most of the income, most of the livelihood is at the whims of a massive company I have no hope in hell of influencing. And it's interesting kind of seeing how all of this has grown. Nick, if you want to throw a question from the chat, and let's go ahead and start to bring in Nigel with that as well.
Yeah, sure. Let's see here. There was one that we got from Google Plus that was asking. Let me try to find the exact one. But he was here it is. Who is making the claims? This comes from Stephen Costin on Google Plus. Who is making the claims on behalf of defunct companies such as THQ? And I think that kind of the answer is not a human. It's automated, right?
Well, you know what? Actually, with that, can we also bring in Steph Shop?
Yeah, good timing. Yeah, we're gonna bring in two people from the publishing side of things.
So Nigel Lowry, many of you probably know him as Fort Parker on Twitter. He works at Devolver Digital and is just a wonderful man who you know, really is kind of at the center on a different end of this equation. They want to have this stuff covered. Steph Shop is a dear friend. She works in PR and handles a lot of the clients of Deep Silver, which obviously acquired many of the products from THQ. Stephanie, do you mind if we throw this question at you? Oh, and go ahead and unmute yourself. Hit that. There we go.
I'm unmuted. Well, this is something that actually has been addressed publicly before by Deep Silver, and I do think that Ms. Norris is watching, so I just want to shout out, hi Aubrey. But it's back when Saints Row, back when Saints Row 4 was launching over the summer, there were a lot of copyright claims that popped up, and Deep Silver proactively implemented a whitelist Google Doc and made that public and said if you're a YouTuber and you would like to stream our games, please sign up. We'll work to make sure that these old antiquated THQ blocks are lifted. So that was something that was a problem with that particular launch that it's my understanding is still happening with other publishers that are now no longer even in the game, that have these rigid and almost draconian policies that have been sort of just sitting in the YouTube legal files. And now that they're coming through everybody's accounts with a wrecking ball, these are now presenting themselves, and in a lot of cases, a lot of YouTubers have just been looking at these, being like, I don't even know who this company is. What is this company? It's a company that doesn't exist anymore. So how do you then unblock that?
So I mean, are they? Did these kind of like were they part of these sweeps, and they wanted to have their IP protected, and they just kind of got grandfathered in, even though the company themselves doesn't exist, and the rights and the licensing have moved on to another entity? I mean, that it's so hard to imagine that, you know, sort of THQ coming back out of the grave trying to reclaim what is theirs.
I think that's definitely something that the THQ lawyers would have to answer for, and something that I certainly can't speak for just from my point of view. But I do know that as the projects that I work with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and the games that we work on, I can say that every single client that Tinsley PR has, we support streaming, and we support the YouTubers, from the AAA companies like Deep Silver all the way down the gamut to your two-person indie studio making mobile games. We absolutely encourage this. So it's been disheartening to put all of this effort forth to let them know that there are publishers and PR and marketing people out there that see the value in what they're doing. We find their videos incredibly entertaining, and then to have them sort of look at us like we're the enemy when we've been proactively trying to champion this entire new way for gamers to get their information. It's been incredibly frustrating.
Nigel, I'll bring you in on this, because this is, I mean, you and I have done live streams together. You know, you're on the publisher side. You have relationships with developers, and I think that you, especially kind of the market that Devolver serves.
Right.
I mean, what is where you see the value in, you know, having this YouTube content made on your product, and why you guys don't think it's a threat, and sort of what kind of damage for especially a company like Devolver if these strikes keep on going, and it makes it harder and harder to get this content out there.
It's a huge strike against companies like Devolver. We are, as you said, I guess in the 1%, right? We're a very small company. We work with very small developers, and we're out there kicking and screaming to try, with Stephanie, trying to get attention to our games. And you know, I'll take a most recent example. I'd say is Shadow Warrior. John did a video on it, and it still is the largest viewed video that we had for that game, outside of our trailers, outside of anything we've done. And that alone tells you how important this is to our games, our developers, and our company. So when folks try and encroach upon that, and from what we've seen, without any sort of validation, they're just kind of being claimed randomly. It stinks. So that's why, you know, before this got really huge, the reason we put up some ridiculous website, we put up a website, I think it's like, can I post and monetize devolvergames.com or something like that. We did that months ago simply because it was a convenience to me, because I was getting a lot of emails from people saying, hey, can I monetize, can I post? And you know what, I mean, this, as I just said, this is a very important part of our marketing efforts. The folks that you have on this panel are incredibly important to what we do, and to getting our games out there, and generating that awareness for games that people may not have otherwise have heard of. So we just put that up because it was like, look, absolutely, this is something we need. This isn't about like, yeah, we'll let this pass. I mean, this is crucial to getting our message out there and getting our games out there. So we're huge supporters, I guess, if you will.
Now, are you aware of Devolver games that are in videos that have been hit with a strike? I'm kind of curious, because it sounds like not just you guys, but actually some very major publishers kind of feel a little bit, you know, impotent in this. It seems to be coming from these other sort of unknown third parties that are hard to kind of figure out what their intent is and what
I think I know what's happening with Nigel's is there's two different ways to get sort of have to prove that you own the content within the video. One is the content ID flag, which is unlikely if it's happening in Nigel's situation. If it is on the behalf of another party, that's absolutely criminal. But in the case of his, it's probably the random sweeps that YouTube tends to do. I'm not sure what triggers it. It's happened to us about twice on some of our most popular videos. It seems like you hit a precipice of views, and they will contact you and say, hey, noticed you have a video here, and prove that you own everything in it. and then you have to copy and paste something that actually does that. And in Nigel's case, his providing
it's
of
like
a
an
form
IRS
letter.
audit. I mean, really.
Well, the other part, you're absolutely right. I think that has a lot to do with it. But one thing I've noticed, and we mostly get it through via email and Twitter, and at Devolver Digital. And one of our games that's very popular is Hotline Miami, and that has a lot of licensed music from small artists, but we properly license it. They're all huge fans, and everything's covered and use the context of the game. But what happens is, I'll use one example, this company called CD Baby, which I've never heard of until I had to look this up. But they started flagging, I think, the music in the game, and it has nothing to do with them. So it was, they're just a place that resells stuff, resells the music. So they were going through and flagging things.
In that case, I think I have experience with that with a small music creator, an independent artist in Norway that actually gave us license to use his music because he was a fan of the show. He later signed with Merlin Phonophile, and sometimes that can happen where the artist gives permission and then actually ends up signing over his rights to somebody else and not thinking about the repercussions it might have for those that he verbally gave agreements to earlier.
Yeah, it goes a bit further than that as well, actually. I heard Miracle of Sound, who you're probably aware of, works for Escapist, does a bunch of really fantastic video game-themed original songs, was giving out permission. Flags were coming in from companies that weren't even necessarily directly connected to him, but were connected to a company that was connected to him. So it actually goes that far that these guys have just shoved all of this content, most likely automatically. I imagine there's got to be some kind of batch upload system to the Content ID flagging system, and they've just done that complete scattershot, put everything in there and just said, flag it, go, and not actually had any concern whatsoever. And that would explain the Hotline Miami stuff. It would explain all manner of different flags there for the audio, and it also shows just how horribly flawed this system is.
I think people need to some perspective that you might not, like some folks might not have, is some of us here at Revision 3 actually just got back from some time at YouTube, and one of the things they went over when they were doing this sort of
YouTube camp.
Yeah, we call it YouTube camp. It's basically a YouTube certification program.
YouTube scores and YouTube songs.
Yeah.
One time at YouTube camp, I got flagged for a copyright.
Yeah, it was awesome. But one of the things they were talking about was the idea of a reference file and how a reference file absolutely does not have to be a video. Like for example, in CD Baby's case, I'm sure that they batch upload every MP3 that's ever gone through their system and automatically flag it, which seems extremely dangerous. But the other point that they made when they were talking about all this Content ID stuff is the idea that they want to be as distant from it as possible. It's really, really important from YouTube's perspective for this to be between the person who claims to own it and the person who uploaded the video, and YouTube just wants to not touch it because the volume of content on their website is so extreme and fair use is so blurry that it behooves them to just be like, we're stepping back from this. This is on you guys.
But I think that's a little. I mean, that's what they say, but it sounds a little bullshit to me, simply because it's you're guilty before proven innocent kind of thing.
But also they own the Content ID. I mean, they own the algorithm,
they built that,
software, whatever it is that's going out there, like the cephalopod things from the Matrix, like stuff.
They're not following the law to the letter here. They're actually going above and beyond it, unnecessarily so, when it comes to a lot of this stuff. There is no law that says this has to instantly disappear. A DMCA request is not the same as a takedown flag. It's not the same thing. A takedown flag is purely a YouTube thing. So when they're just basically putting their partners out to be shot at by anyone and everyone and then saying, well, this has got nothing to do with us, it's between you two, sorry, you just gave them a gun at which to execute us.
That gun was given to them as an advent to Google purchasing YouTube. When that happened and everybody realized how deep their pockets were, as an appeasement to copyright holders, they created Content ID to say, here you go, we're on your side, see, so you can't sue us.
Right.
Which didn't completely help because we all know Viacom. Has Viacom and Google settled on that? But I mean, you're talking about large media behemoths. You know, they're trying to play.
Did you guys see the thing where Angry Nintendo Nerd or James the video game nerd, and you know how he's affiliated with Game Trailers, which is Viacom. They once actually had his entire channel removed because they identified his content as being Viacom content because they had licensed him to their site. they actually accidentally took down their own content
For like auto cannibalism for like 3 days.
Nigel, I want to get back to you because you're touching on something that actually plagued me a lot when I was at G4.
Right.
I think because it was television, there's a lot more lawyers in the room when you're doing television. And there was always a lot of discomfort with just even the mere fact that we were pulling footage from the games and putting it up on TV without, myriad written agreements or content agreements. I think at one point G4 actually had them, but I never really considered the discrete parts that make up a game. And say the example of Hotline Miami. You have licensed music to go into the game. When you guys are giving the consent to stream, to capture, to make videos of Hotline Miami, are you able to speak with the authority of the entirety of what's inside the game, or is it only the part that is the game Hotline Miami or the music? I mean, are we starting to see that there could be kind of piecemeal claims to, if it's not ownership,
Right.
a rights claim inside of a video game?
That's a very good point, because this could be something that changes the way we have to write our own agreements. The way that works in Hotline Miami is the music is licensed. Each track, I think it's like 20 different artists, which I all had a license, and each track is licensed for the game and to be used in context of the game and promotion of the game. That's how the agreement is written. Now, obviously, the promotion of the game we consider really anything we do, and in the context of the game, I think that applies completely to what streamers, LPers, etc. would do. I think where it could get tricky is when people, if you go look up Hotline Miami soundtrack on YouTube, there's something that has it all strung together and it's like 15 million views or something insane. That I can't cover, because that's someone grabbing music that is outside the context of the game that I can't really do anything about. I can, if you are putting on a video of the game itself, that's covered, I think, in our agreement, and we're allowed to say how to do it.
The intent of the video is primarily for the demonstration of the game and not isolation of another, I guess, IP that's inside of it. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be, as you point out, a very tricky thing for someone like us, whereas I think someone referenced either Konami or Capcom earlier that does all their own stuff. Well, we work with a lot of contractors and freelancers between music, sound design, art, UI, anything, because a lot of times we're working with very small teams, 2 or 3 people, and they need help, and you never know. You write agreements, but you never know if someone says, could just pull a fast one. So we got to make sure we're covered, and our developers, more importantly, are covered when we want to be out there promoting their games on these channels that are getting millions of views.
All right, Nick, on that note, do you want to see if there's, do you actually want to bring in one of our panelists or see what's happening out there on chat?
Yeah, sure. Let's, we've got someone who joined at the very start, has been waiting very patiently, named Elliot here. So let's see if he can successfully unmute himself and ask a question. Hi, Elliot.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Elliot, and congratulations. We obviously made this as challenging as possible for someone to make it onto this panel. So I tip my hat to you. Where are you reaching us from?
England, UK.
All right, I had a feeling I heard that accent. John, do you know him?
Yes, everyone in England lives in the same place. It's called London. Anything north of London is full of barbarians and dragons.
Elliot, anyway, throw a question or something out to the panel here.
Okay, one of the things, because I'm more of a viewer than a creator myself, I used to do stuff, and even back when I did make stuff, even I got randomly, I did an Assassin's Creed Let's Play quite a few, like, couple of years ago. Even that got ID'd by some random company. It wasn't Ubisoft whatsoever. The thing that I've noted is, genuinely, do you all think, regardless of what we're using right now to do this, do you think it's just general laziness on Google/YouTube's part? I mean, across the board, or do you just think it's yeah?
You're saying that because there aren't clear protections in place, so that this level of abuse.
Yeah, it just goes a blanket bomb, as John said. It's just
I want to jump in real quick, actually, because I think someone pointed out earlier, maybe it was Nick. You have to understand the amount of content they have, so running through
100
YouTube.
hours every minute.
Right. So it's a laziness. I don't disagree. It might be on a certain department's part, but the lawyers rule everything in big companies. Yeah. Specifically, the lawyers rule everything to protect those public companies from getting sued for millions of dollars. And so I think the easy way and the lazy way, I agree with you, is to simply just sit back and go, you guys fight it out. I mean, that's what Apple will do. Apple will do on clones. It's up to them. It's up to you guys to fight it out.
I mean, lawyers. And when you say lawyers rule everything, my wife rules me.
Right. We know this. You don't need to broadcast this. We know
this. This is common, man. Don't worry about it. We all suffer.
The idea is that the lawyer is to protect the client, and so they will go the Occam's razor. They will find that clear line where they know that the client is being protected. Client sometimes pushes back, saying, "Hey, that's not going to be in our best business interest. Clearly, this is Google doesn't feel that this is damaging enough." I'm curious about what happened over the past 3 days. And this is the thing. As you pointed out, Elliot, you got hit by one of these really weird claims a while ago. And as we really noticed on this panel, this is not something that just happened. But then what happened in the past 3 days that this thing exploded with such ferocity? I mean, Dragnet really is the only word that I can think of. I mean, it is like the entirety of the IRS started to audit 10 people all at the same time.
I can speak to why it's been perceivably exploding for most people, and this is if they are under a partner network or a multi-channel network. Right. The reason that it seems like it's exploding to them is because YouTube has essentially just flipped the switch on those who are under those umbrellas for the multi-channel networks.
Yep.
I have been experiencing this, having not partnered with one of these networks for the last 3 to 4 months, and it's been ramping up pretty steadily. Whereas today they actually made a statement that said that they have subjected those affiliates, the unmanaged partners under the networks, to the same content ID that we've all been going through the entire time.
Now, but why? What is to Google's advantage, be it relationships with other types of content holders or relationships with the MCN? Why did this transition have to suddenly happen? If not now, why not 5 years from now?
The negotiations for this took place during October 30th of this year, and that was posted to an ad blog, a very popular one, that the magazine. Adweek. They actually reported on the fact that they were negotiating with multi-channel networks because they saw a problem in the fact that these networks were getting too big and they weren't actually doing what they were supposedly supposed to do, which is, take responsibility for the content they're uploading. And they said, look, you don't have to work harder, you don't have to staff more people to look after them, but what you do is have to put them into categories so that we can determine which ones come back out into the wild and get applied to our system again.
Right.
And obviously, I guess this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is of interest to Adweek, which is kind of the trade weekly for the advertising industry, is that, it is those Google ads. Obviously that's the thing that keeps us and YouTube afloat, really.
Yeah, it's a legitimacy point as well, because if you look at, say, the Pirate Bay, you'll never find a single legitimate company that ever advertises on that website. All of the ads are horrible for a very good reason. And if YouTube becomes something that has a real big reputation for illegitimacy in terms of respect for copyright, then companies will actually abandon Google because they do not want to be associated with that, and there's legal implications to it as well. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of pressure from that. It's actually in Google's best interests to pull this. Unfortunately, it's coming at the cost of people that have been making their money for years.
And it should be remembered that no matter who ends up getting flagged or who ends up claiming the content, like in the case of Nintendo, when Nintendo claims these videos for their own, YouTube and Google don't care because they're getting their cut still. They're sharing the revenue with Nintendo instead of with me.
Exactly.
Right.
Stephanie, I want to bring you back in, so if you'll unmute yourself there. I think I think you muted yourself again. There you go.
I'm trying to make sure that there's no echo while you ask me the question you want me to answer.
Gotcha.
So I will listen to the question and then I will unmute myself.
Stealing our audio without permission. We've got to put a claim on this.
So I think what we're encountering is this. And games always seem to be the new conundrum when it comes to old media, and as we're now learning now that it's new media. That I don't think that YouTube, that if it was movies, if it was music, if it was a book, that using YouTube the way games use YouTube probably wouldn't work that well, because you are kind of giving away the entire thing for free, and that games have a very unique benefit in the way that they can kind of capitalize on new media. I mean, am I right in seeing it that way? That unfortunately, I think old ways of thinking are kind of once again screwing games.
Well, yes. the short, yes. You know, it's interesting that you bring up the music. I know music was brought up earlier, and movies now. It makes sense to me for a movie company, distributor, whatever, production studio to not want your entire film streaming on Twitch. You know, broken up into 4 pieces on YouTube, because that's the whole thing. Games, however, it's a $60 purchase most of the time, and you, as a fan, if you can watch somebody demonstrate to you how much fun that game is, or how interesting, fundamentally interesting to you for whatever reason that game is, you can sort of try it before you buy it, or view it before you buy it. So it's almost like we, the industry, are being kind of publicly flogged with all of that old bullshit baggage. Sorry, I'm not sure if I can swear, but bullshit baggage from, I mean, you know, today's video games, we're blamed for all the violence in the world. We're blamed for corrupting children. We're blamed for this. We're blamed for that. And now we're blamed for wrecking advertising. I mean, where does it stop? I don't know. I've been championing the idea of YouTube for as long as I can, you know, for as long as I did, you know, found out about it. But this mentality and this, I don't know, this sort of ganging up on games for everything by the people in charge of the law is really hurting us. And someone mentioned earlier I was reading the questions that were coming in. Someone asked if publishers would work to change the law. For these copyright laws, and I mean, God, I would hope so. But I don't. I was gonna say I just don't know how long that would take. How many years, decades that would take with these, you know, massive lawyers, and I just I don't know. It's so yes. That's the long answer to your question. Yes.
It's got to happen at some point, doesn't it? There has to be a lobby at some point to get the law updated. Because right now the problem with this law is that for the most part it doesn't even apply. And a lot of the arguments that you'll see either for or against the changes and the monetization of actual gaming footage are based entirely on old ideas and ridiculous analogies that don't actually make sense. Right. The easiest and the worst one is, oh, well, you can't upload a movie to YouTube, so you shouldn't be able to upload a game to YouTube. That's an absolute nonsense statement because, as Stephanie accurately pointed out, this whole try before you buy thing is a factor, but I think what's more important is the transformative nature of playing a game. I play a game in a totally different way to everyone else who's ever played that game. Probably much worse than everybody else that's played that game. But the point of it is that I could have beaten that game entirely, and then I go back to watch someone else play it because they play it in a different way. It's not the same as watching a movie twice, and it's not the movie that's doing all of the work. So what needs to happen, because this is not going to be dealt with in the law for years, as Stephanie accurately pointed out, is that content creators and publishers need to get their heads together and figure out what's going on here, because this is really what it comes down to, isn't it? It's who owns the rights, what should be allowed to happen, and let's just be reasonable about the whole thing and apply a little bit of common sense to it.
Right.
It's almost like fair use was designed specifically for video games.
Gee, yeah, it's a funny idea, isn't it?
Because when you consider one of the two of the major considerations for fair use is transformative in nature, and yes, every video game by its very core is transformative, and second is the effect on the market value of the original work.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yes.
Could I jump in on this?
By all means.
As a buyer of video games, the perfect example for me is literally the other day I watched John's video on Black Flag, I watched NerdCube's video on Black Flag, and I also watched the Revision 3 review on Black Flag. Without those 3 pieces of content, I would never have bought the game. Simply because last year's was rubbish, for one.
Damn right.
You're right.
But the fact is with people praising it in a video and in a medium that I watch and enjoy more than I do, say, live television, it caused me to go out of my way, in fact, and actually go into a game store to purchase it, even though I could have just purchased it online, had it downloaded.
If I could play devil's advocate for a moment there, Elliot, and ask you if there's ever been an instance in which you've watched a Let's Play and felt as though, because you had seen maybe the story from beginning to end, you felt as though you didn't need to or want to experience the story from there. And I'd be interested to hear Nigel and Stephanie's thoughts on that, too, if there is ever a negative effect on the market value of the original work.
That's a good point.
I don't think that's ever been the case where I've seen something from the start to finish. But there always, obviously, is a negative impact if someone actually has a negative opinion of whatever the game is or whatever the actual product is. That will have a negative impact on my opinion.
In my experience, like the only game playthrough that I've ever watched all the way through from start to finish was Giant Bomb's Persona 4 Endurance Run, which is 100 hours of a JRPG.
Yes.
And I mean, the way that I think about it is like I'm not a JRPG guy at all. I never in a trillion years would go pick up like a random Atlas JRPG with a 4 in the title and a Shin Megami Tensei at the beginning of the title. And like I actually went on to buy Catherine because I wanted to support Atlas and Atlas localizing Persona team games, which is something I never would have done before that. And also, for what it's worth, Atlas loves the Giant Bomb Endurance Run and has a really great relationship with those guys because that did so well for both parties. It just seems like in the vast majority of cases, it's win-win, and when it's not, maybe your video game isn't very good. Like I think that's what we're all thinking.
That's it right there. It's like I'm very much a kind of gamer that doesn't give a damn about story. Like I've said time and again, I am purely mechanics focused, and I will ignore a story entirely, and people will be furious with me for doing that. But at the end of the day, if because of the story of your game, if seeing that and not playing it, not experiencing it, actually hurts your game probably wasn't that great to begin with. Exactly. I've said it time and again. Like play something like Brothers. It's completely different to watching Brothers, and everyone should play Brothers, by the way.
What happens
Journey,
at the end of Brothers can only be experienced with the controller in your hand.
Exactly.
You will never appreciate what happens.
And that's games in a nutshell, you know. And if as games we're going more towards an interactive movie, which is super cutscene heavy, then I don't want any part of it because, frankly, I watch movies to watch movies. I play games to be involved.
I was going to mention Beyond Two Souls and where that comes in because as we're redefining the concept of what a video game is, there are occurrences where I feel like I'm maybe breaching into territory I'm not comfortable with our full playthrough of Beyond Two Souls because as a game, I feel like it's worthless as an experience to anybody who's actually watching us play it in the first place.
I disagree on the state of David Cage games because I kind of defended David Cage games for a while, funnily enough. The kind of QTE nature of David Cage games. Not only do you have multiple different ways that a scene can play out, which means your playthrough is not the same as other people's, and your playthrough has value because people don't necessarily want to play the game again to see a different outcome, but they'll still play the game in the first place. But also, the way that they do QTEs in that game is often very much focused on the idea of if you don't do this in time, something else is going to happen. There's actually a lot of pressure on you in those games.
Then again, I'm just going to keep pushing back with this. How about Phoenix Wright, which is a really popular game that we play on our show, but in the context of Phoenix Wright, there is absolutely no way you can change the outcome. It's just how you get there. And in actuality, you end up going through pretty much every single avenue, every single player who plays it. We've gotten the full sort of blessing, it seems, from Capcom. They've retweeted our cast and stuff, so it's a non-issue really. But I feel as though that's one experience where it's possible somebody who watches the full thing might not feel like they want to resolve the crime.
Yeah, I think it comes down to might, doesn't it? And visual novels, I mean, the clue's in the title. It's a novel. Which therefore is the problem with it. But even in that game, even though there's no real choice, figuring out the crime is really what makes that game enjoyable. And you go through playing through the story and eventually figuring things out is what's most rewarding about it. And I don't feel that watching it conveys that same feeling of reward.
And to defend my own point, I find that because the nature of Let's Plays is to peter it out over a long course of time, that those watching have ample opportunity to get the game and play ahead as it's taking place.
Yep.
I was going to comment on Nick's point that I think with Persona 4 like that kind of I would never play it. I want to look at it, but Nigel, I mean discoverability. You know,
Right.
you don't have the marketing budget of EA. You don't have the marketing budget of Take-Two. You know,
Yeah.
how do you get the word out there about, you know, the third Serious Sam game or so many of the games that you have, that it really is kind of essential? Because if you go into a GameStop, they're still just flogging primarily the games that everyone already knows exists.
Yeah, you're not going to see our games in GameStop. We do all entirely digital, right? And it's important to us that the exposure's there, as we talked about earlier. But I think, as someone pointed out, you know, we have to be, when I send a game, or I guess Stephanie sends the game to John or Ryan or whoever, you're putting it out there. You're not putting it out there thinking, yeah, they're going to like this piece of shit. You're thinking out, they're going to love this game because it's a good game. And
yes, you are. Yes, you are. 100% sending a game to John saying, you know, hey, your check is in the mail, 10 out of 10.
But, you know,
I'm going to slowly leave.
It used to be I used to wait for EGM to come into the mail when I was, you know, 14, and you would read a review. You'd read, I don't know, 200 words or something. It was these ridiculously small reviews sometimes, and you'd take an opinion, but you know what? You never got to see it. Well, the advent of what's going on now lets me sit down and watch somebody play this game. And whether you like it or not is going to be, the whole thing is magnified greatly, because if John sits down and plays something and really enjoys it, that's going to help the game quite a bit. If he really hates it, that's going to hurt the game quite a bit probably too, if there's people on the fence. But the fact of the matter is, you got to be willing to think that your game's good or not. If you do have shit games, you know what? People aren't going to like it anyways. They probably weren't going to buy it, and this, what's going on out there on, you know, YouTube and Twitch, is certainly was going to help it. I mean, I'm guilty of to what Elliot was talking about. He's never maybe watched something and looked at it and decided not to buy it, but I have, simply because it's my business to look at a competitive set of games, and I can't play every game that's out there. And so I will sit down and watch Let's LPs of games, and just to learn what these games are about, the competitive set, what's going on. And because I don't have time to play it, it's not about the purchasing, but I don't have time to play it, and I actually learn a lot that way. I watch a lot of you guys and learn a lot that way. So it's very important to us from that standpoint. But going back to whether you're going to sell some more or not, I mean, you got to be willing to put yourself out there. If you're sending codes out to this, what we do is, as Stephanie does, sending out to this wide group of people that are going to take your game and just rip apart any sort of marketing thing that you put over it, any tagline, any key art. It's just the game and
$100 bill.
them. Yeah, well, no. I mean, it's literally your raw game and that person, they're playing it, and it's up to, if they don't enjoy it, they're not going to enjoy it, and you got to be willing to accept that. And I think that's, you know, an important part of the, I guess, a contract you have with these folks.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just jump in quickly on that note. There's a whole component of Let's Plays that I think is hurting the game community beyond what just general promotion and sort of you know, monetizing your game. Remember back in the day when we would play games, and I remember playing the original Fear and getting stuck and jumping on the internet and finding the text walkthroughs of the game to try to help you past it. I can't tell you how many times I was playing Hotline Miami and you know, throwing my keyboard down or throwing my mouse down and saying, I work on this game and I still don't know how to get past this level, and I would jump on to a Let's Play and figure out how the hell to get past a certain level. Right. Where's my timing? Where's this? And I think that when you take that away from the community, you're taking away what people like Nigel and I strive to build over our careers, and that's an authentic community for gamers where they can talk about your games and share your games and share their likes. And it's one thing if you don't like the game. I've sent John, you know, a lot of games that he hasn't liked, but he's at least given them a fair shake. And that's, as a PR person, really all you can ask for. You can message the strengths, then you can downplay the weaknesses of your game. But in the end, once you send that game out into the wild, you're losing control over how you necessarily want the audience to perceive it. But taking away, going back to the original point, taking away those Let's Plays and taking away that sense of community, and having gamers who have spent years putting hundreds of videos up and building this content, taking that away from them and having them go do something else, that hurts gaming, it hurts the sense of community, and I think that that's exponentially more damaging than losing that monetization, because the sense of the community is what makes gaming more special to me than any other industry that I worked in prior to being in video games.
If I can devil's advocate to that as well, I just want to say that in the case of Content ID, it's only really taking the rights away from certain people to monetize this content. So one might say that the community isn't having anything taken away. It's just being given to those who are doing it out of the passion for gaming as opposed to a paycheck. And then that's more virtuous than anybody who's making a profession off of it.
I'd like to counterpoint that and
Go for
simply say that the fact of the matter is the ability to produce these videos on a regular basis requires a significant dedication in both time and actual monetary value. This microphone I'm using right now is about $600, the interface $750, my computer untold amount of money put into that specifically to make the best quality video I possibly can for my viewer. And I keep nitpicking the hell out of my own videos just to try and improve that quality. You cannot do that if you're doing it as a side project when you're working 60, 70 hours a week, because I'm already working 80 hours a week. So, in my opinion, we most assuredly have the passion for it. We'd have never started it if we didn't have the passion for it. One might say
that being more invested financially in this, we are more passionate about it.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we are willing to actually spend money to make it good.
We're passionate. So that's... to Stephanie's point, it's interesting. I mean, other types of entertainment have communities, and I'm probably just going to end up insulting just about everybody out there. But I think we sometimes get, like, for singers and for movies, we get community and sycophant kind of mixed up. Whereas, really, with games, it is there because of the process of discovery. That, before there was an internet, the only way I could play Legend of Zelda was the Playground and Nintendo Power, but my parents were cheap. And it was just, that way that you have to kind of interact to kind of get that experience to discover things. And it really is something that, once again, is more unique in how it's applied to video games than it is to more of a, kind of linear form of entertainment. Hey, Nick, do you want to bring in one more person?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk to Steven over here. Hey, Steven.
Steven.
Oh, hey guys. Surprise.
Hey, you were ready for that, were you? Congratulations.
No, I wasn't expecting to get on.
Surprise.
I'm very happy to be here, though.
That is the third time I've seen that shirt in 2 days. And actually, one of the days it was on a 7-year-old.
It's the Loot Crate shirt that they were selling.
Jesus Christ, calm down. What the hell?
So, what is your question for the panel about the YouTube and the YouTube?
Well, the first thing I wanted to say was I heard of Shadow Warrior through Rev3 Games initially, so it definitely piqued my interest, so I was reading up about it. It wasn't a day one purchase for me personally at the time, but then I saw TB's video, and that definitely made me buy it. So we need to keep this going. Like this
or
kind
at
of
least we need to keep TotalBiscuit going. Apparently we're not doing a good job, but John
we're
can keep
kind of the Lucy to...
Give me all your ad revenue.
Yeah, I think it was Fraser who mentioned asked whether or not something was negatively affected by a Let's Play. Like, obviously, like I just said, Shadow Warrior was positively affected by it, but I know people who actually didn't buy Injustice, Gods Among Us, because they just watched the entire story online. So,
do you think they were really going to buy it in the first place? I think...
They can't have been that dedicated.
Yeah.
Well, they might have.
For God's sake.
Those are probably just DC
fanboys.
fanboys.
Comic book nerds.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of
they're
like,
huge comic book
I want to
nerds.
read Old Man and the Sea, but first I'm going to listen to this dude read it to me, and I'm going to decide if I'm going to read it myself. It just, it doesn't, but I see where you're coming from with that, Stephen.
I liken it almost to piracy in that the people who will go out of their way in order to watch someone else experience a piece of content that was originally intended for them to play firsthand would probably not have been a sale in the first place.
Or an evangelist. Had they purchased it. Hey, Nick,
let's be honest. Cutscenes are probably one of the worst ways to tell a story in the history of the interactive medium. And if that's the only way you're telling your story, you probably didn't design your game very well.
Well, also, Injustice, I never, actually, to be honest, I don't think I ever said, God, I got to find out what happens next.
It was a pretty good story, though.
It was good, but it being a fighting game, that's just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's about punishment.
It ties into the comic, though. That's the big thing. So
Irony being is, I guess they were supposed to be putting, the story into the new Super Smash Brothers, and they decided not to because of the YouTubers. And I've always wanted to have an explanation of why they're fighting, other than the fact that anyone named Jigglypuff would want to kick the crap out of anybody.
It's actually really interesting. Like Masahiro Sakurai, the guy who is the director and creator of Super Smash Brothers, has come out and said that the new Smash Brothers game coming out is not going to have the elaborate Subspace Emissary cutscenes that were so popular in Brawl, and his concern is that those cutscenes, his words, will just end up on YouTube. And that is actually, according to him,
they're
motivated him to not make
quick.
cutscenes at all.
Shut that down immediately.
That's just the first time stuff like that is public. I have had issues with that game all the way back into G4, where very restrictions were being placed on press and were not being placed on other internet bloggers.
He's just a broken man now, though, isn't he? Isn't he been saying stuff like he'd have killed himself by now if cameras weren't on him or something?
No, I think that was me.
Good answer.
Anyway, we get mixed up with Sakurai on all the time.
He just doesn't sound like he's having a good time, though, from what I've read.
I guess not. I mean, that's a really good example as well, because who on earth doesn't buy a Smash Brothers game? A game which will give you thousands of hours of entertainment potentially as a fighting game, just because they happen to watch the cutscenes. If anything, that's a selling point, and just say, oh, look at how awesome these cutscenes are. I bet the rest of the game's amazing. I want to experience that. That's always the attitude that I've taken, and I think that the points that you made were pretty valid. If someone's just watching cutscenes on YouTube and saying, well, I've experienced that game, then they probably weren't that interested in it to begin with.
It's so ridiculous, too, to point at cutscenes and saying, well, this is the reason to buy. I mean, literally, outside of people like us that can't afford the big trailers, all trailers now are just one big cutscene. I mean, every game, they're not showing gameplay anymore in these big games. This is all you're getting advertised at anyways. I mean, if that's what you're going to put out as your advertising, why not let people play those same cutscenes online? It doesn't make any damn sense.
Well, the thing with this is you see a lot on TV nowadays, literally in the bottom left or right-hand corner will say, not in-game footage.
Right.
In every advert I've seen so far for both PlayStation and
Oh,
Xbox.
that's a bigger issue in the UK because of AVP.
You have the honest
AVP, Aliens Colonial Marines.
We can lie to you here in America.
In the U.S., it will say actual in-game footage, or it just doesn't say anything. You don't notice.
It will say, this makes you more handsome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have time to bring in one more?
Let's see if we can bring in our last guy and fill out the entire panel, which is not always accomplished.
Ooh, a full house. 10. Poker.
Hello, Clinton.
Hello.
How are you? Congratulations.
Awesome. If you don't remember, Adam, I think I was on the very first Address the Sess like 3 months ago or whenever it was, so I'm kind of happy to be back.
Wow.
Good
to have you back. I think it was a year ago. Was it a year ago, Nick?
Yeah, the first Address the Sess was December of 2012, so we're coming up on the 1 year anniversry.
I am. I'm a year older, and you can see, hey, this is what the internet has done to me. Anyway, Clinton.
Just to kind of tag on to what Stephanie was saying with the text-based walkthroughs from like GameFAQs.com and from the old G4 reviews of the games, those were big things, like as far as what was going to make me buy a game back when I was in high school a number of years ago. But that was the biggest thing, like these reviews, like the Let's Plays and stuff like that. That really, I go to these to say, hey, I get a 30-second blurb on TV or a 10-second blurb in a YouTube ad. I'd like to watch this a little bit and see if I actually want to play this game. Now, I'm not going to sit down and watch 100 hours of Persona 4 like some people, but...
Nick's a little crazy. I'm going to have a conversation, so don't worry about that.
That's bravo, I guess. I don't know. But, stuff like that, I'm going to buy this game. Like, if I'm interested in the first, 15, 20 minutes of gameplay and it has some other stuff, if somebody enjoys this game and it's kind of in the genre game I like, then hell yeah, I'm going to get into it and I'll more than likely buy it. But also, on the other side of that, like, when TB did the, what was it? Not the incident, the Stanley incident, I think it was?
The Gary's incident.
Oh, Gary's incident, not Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
Stanley Parable's great, right?
It's finals week for me right now, and I'm in the video game programming. Ugh. But, stuff like that, if it's a bad game or if somebody that has played hundreds and hundreds of games and has thousands of hours of gameplay of different games, you know, under their belt, if they say, well, this is crap, then more than likely it's crap. So.
Now on that note, John, am I right that the Gary's Incident video caused an incident?
It did. Right now, there are some people on the internet blaming me for this entire copyright apocalypse because of that video, which is funny because that video basically pushed it in the exact opposite direction. But yeah, the Gary's Incident video caused the incident. The video about the incident was a bigger incident, which had about 3 million views on that. It is 3.1 million right now. So yeah, that was and funnily enough, that was about another side of copyright which we don't even touch on here, which is the actual takedown request. It's not a content ID match.
And I wanted to touch on that because I think the problem that everyone's experiencing now is so pervasive that even the internet doesn't believe there's some kind of attempt to hide opinions. That it's too vast, it's too broad. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and from you guys who have also been doing videos, Fraser and JP. How much is that other idea that if I'm being negative, that someone's going to manipulate and exploit sort of takedown and copyright law to keep that negative opinion from finding a wider audience?
Well, in that case, like, it's interesting because I have this sort of pipe dream in which in the future we somehow coexist with game developers in sort of the way that music producers coexist with people who do covers of songs. And in the case of Nintendo, who seems very steadfast that they never want anybody to monetize or make money off of their content, some sort of a thing where they would be able to take a cut just like a music writer does and give a little bit to the Let's Player in some sort of agreement that's facilitated by YouTube. But the main problem I've hypothesized in that scenario is that there would be some sort of, if you put too much power into the hands of the creator, that they would choose to give very little cut or no cut at all to certain people who are negative towards their content, as opposed to the other way around. In terms of what is happening now in the case of TotalBiscuit and just a false DMCA takedown notice, in that case, I would just like to see precedent set and see a lawsuit, which can happen once a DMCA is issued, a lawsuit go the other way.
I definitely considered it. It did come to mind, honestly. I mean, that it would be a perfect case because they are a small French-Canadian developer.
And there are people that would represent you pro bono as well, by the way.
Yeah, I did. I had a little bit of contact from a few people in regards to that, and it's something that I did consider, and maybe it might still happen, even though
I would love to see like a channel the size of yours, especially because that's what it's going to take is somebody really big to take a stand, and it would be a risk for you, even still, as big as you are.
That's why it's so damn infuriating. It's like I just want to make videos about video games. Can I just stay out of the courtroom for 1 minute? It'll be
and one other thing I can say I've learned over the years. No one ever has fun in court. It is truly the place of last resort. It's obviously it is the last resort.
Your wife doesn't have fun in court.
Cannot be right in any other way. Yeah, but it is. JP, is this something you've experienced? Is this something you've had to consider?
Not really in my case. No, I've always that fear has always been there, and I think when it happened with John, everyone in terms of my channel size was just watching. And waiting to see what was going to happen, because with John being as big as he is, John, you're going to hate me for saying this, but I'm actually glad it happened to you and not someone smaller. Because if it was someone smaller, we
I actually made the same point in that video. I just said, look, this was the dumbest thing they could have possibly done.
Exactly.
How many instances has this happened that we haven't found about that didn't get the blog attention that it should have?
Quite a few. I've heard quite a few. I heard when this whole thing went down, I got loads of people come to me and say, "Oh, that happened to me previously for whatever basis." It's like, yeah, you're right. This is why this is terrible because YouTube allows this to happen to people without a voice, and this time it just happened to someone that did have a voice.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you do a video of Hotline Miami 2 when it comes out? We'll sue you or take it down. Then we'll sue you. Then we'll agree to just basically let this lawsuit
false
blow
flag
over.
operation.
We'll set a precedent. You'll win. We'll set a precedent, and we can all move on.
Like one of those fake soccer fouls. You just like fall down in the court.
I'll take a charge for you guys. Let's do it.
But we have to be able to publicly wedgie you, Nigel.
This is approved by PR.
Good. Now it's all a public record. You guys are screwed now. Just screwed.
All right. Yes. How are we screwed? This is great.
Watching.
So, Fraser and John, as I was getting to sort of the end of our 90-minute discussion here, what do you think is going to happen next? I mean, do you think that at least there are elements of Google, of YouTube, that are going, hold on, this isn't good? Because, look, when you poke the gaming community with a stick, it tends to act like something that gets poked with a stick and gets kind of pissy and angry. But there's also this sense that this is kind of being done by a robot, and that, is this something that we can retreat from? There's so many different interests that seem to be at play in what's going on.
That the good thing that's come out of this is that it really has started the dialogue, and specifically what I've been seeing is from developers, everybody from the little guys up to like Naughty Dog and Capcom and Deep Silver have all been tweeting things like, I don't think they were entirely aware of the challenges that were faced by video game content creators on YouTube for some time now, and now they're kind of seeing it from our perspective, and they're saying they're moving things along now and saying, let's get an official policy out so that we can make their jobs easier, so that we can make sure that we grease the system so that they can just slide through, which is, I think, when it comes down to it, what most game developers want is the prevailing video game culture that everybody has a stake in.
Yeah, and I think it also has highlighted what Content ID actually does when these companies never really realized what could possibly happen when they use that system. And the developers that I talked to, and some of them very large, were very surprised when this whole thing went down because they had no intention of ever pulling that off. This may make them re-examine their use of the Content ID system. It may make them be more careful with it. It may even force YouTube to actually make some changes to that system to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen. And right now it's the PR-friendly move to come out and say, yes, absolutely, we're totally okay with that, which is actually giving us a nice little list of developers and publishers that are okay with it. And anyone that's not on that list, well, if you were looking for publicity, if you were looking for promotion, then anyone that's not, in a safe position like myself under a managed partnership is going to be going elsewhere. And that is going to hurt you. There's no question about that.
It's going to end up helping the little guys a lot more too, because
it will, yeah.
In the sense, especially in the case of the little channels where this apparent this process that's going to take a longer time, they're saying, where you have to manually submit and wait for response. The little channels that haven't garnered the trust rating that you get through YouTube, they will focus on the video games and companies that have explicitly stated publicly that you can use our content. Mojang specifically has gone out and said, use Minecraft content, and it's a very popular example that is a great place for a young channel to start.
Yeah,
well,
and
even on the developer side. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say there's one final point that I think that was never brought up that needs to be considered, and this is pretty much to every publisher who should listen to this idea. People are not going to our channels to watch your game. They're going to our channels to watch us play your game, and it could very easily be somebody else's game. YouTube right now for gaming is almost entirely cult of personality driven. There's a reason why PewDiePie is the top of the pile. People do not go to watch whatever games he's playing. He could play anything, literally anything. He played a search engine. Yes, something along those lines. Bro army, bro fist nonsense, blah, 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 screechy, screechy. But it comes down to the idea that this guy played a search engine and got 3 million views. He could play any game he wants, and people are coming to watch him, not your game. Get that into your heads, and if you want to lose that, by all means, feel free to say you can't monetize, because we'll go to another game. There's already 20 times more games coming into my mailbox than I can cover. So play ball or lose the eyeballs. Simple as that.
And JP, any final thoughts?
I think to kind of expand on what Fraser was saying, one of the things that I'm looking forward to, or I guess just watching out for, with the MCNs now out there and taking probably 80-90% of all of their partners and making them this affiliate status, we don't really need these MCNs anymore at that point, because they're not doing anything for us. If they've taken away what they were doing in the first place, and now YouTube's implementing this process of, sure, it might take a day or two longer, we can still monetize the videos. So if they're not going to protect us, then I think a lot of companies or a lot of MCNs out there are just going to lose their entire channel database. And that's what I
Especially
kind of
with
want
the
to see
advent
happening in
of
the
the
future.
unpartner button that's been introduced at the same time as the rollout of this.
Exactly, yeah. So
But
we'll
if
see when
I
that
could
happens.
just kind of wrap up the whole thing is we've discussed, fair use and how it applies to a court of law, which is never going to really enter into this. No precedent has really been set with video games, and I doubt it really will happen. And then we talk about the court of YouTube, where we will almost always lose because we've established that YouTube is hands-off, and they don't want to really, they don't want anybody dipping into their pockets if they get too involved. Where this really matters is the court of public opinion, and I'm speaking right to the viewers now. This matters in how you communicate with mainly the developers in encouraging them to further their policies or get their policies out there so that it makes it easier for us. But in addition, vocalize the fact that if we do encourage you to buy their content, express that to them. Anecdotal evidence goes a long way when it comes out in droves.
Exactly.
All right. Nigel, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think someone just hit it on the side of the smaller YouTubers and Let's Players, but this works out. If the big publishers don't want to play ball with something like this, it only helps people like Devolver Digital and Deep Silver or developers like Flambeer who go to their site and they give you a very easy way to do this. We try and give you a very easy way. Deep Silver is given an easy way. And if these guys don't want to play ball, I mean, I think John made a very good point. If they can't play a Nintendo game, maybe they'll play a Devolver Digital game. If they're going to see whoever played the game, and if we can be there, it's actually good business for us to be on the right side of this. And I mean that when I say the right side of this.
And Steph, any final thoughts?
Play more video games. I honestly, and Nigel just nailed it. It's if you are a larger publisher and you don't understand, or your legal teams have a responsibility to their shareholders to uphold copyright law, great. I will be happily representing those smaller folks and folks that embrace and understand that, and working with the YouTube community to continue to champion this idea. It's the right side. It's good for business. It's great for indies, and that's basically how I feel about it.
No, and I think my final thoughts are, I've gone through such a transition in this year. I came into this job last year still not thinking that there was that much validity in just playing a game, because it was contrary to everything I've been taught in television, and now, we're trying to do more than 2 live streams a week. I completely see it. It's actually, I think, some of the most entertaining stuff that we do. I definitely enjoy it, and just if we create a system that almost is starting to sound two-tiered, and that somehow I can get away with something and other people can't, those other people, those younger people, the people who are experimenting, are the ones, just like an indie game to a AAA publisher, are what I want to keep on seeing to get ideas and see how much more we can push this idea of using the internet, video on it, and video games together to do something exciting. And that almost the same way what we're seeing with patent lawsuits, that something that was originally there to show a diversification of ideas and contents and experiments is now being turned on itself to try to actually hone in and protect only kind of a small breed. And it is very distressing, and I'm really, really hoping that this somehow resolves itself, or at least starts to show a path to resolution very, very soon. I would like to thank this incredible panel that we had today. Obviously, Stephanie Shop, Nigel Lowry. We have JP McDaniel. Of course, we have John Bain. And we have Fraser Agar. Some of you I've only met today. I have every intention of following you more. We would like to thank the audience out there. I know we did something slightly different. I hope you guys stayed entertained. Yeah, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And before everyone else goes, I would like to, of course, acknowledge our sponsor for this week, which was Full Sail University. Of course, if you've stuck with us for the past 90 minutes, you clearly love to play games, or at least you love to watch people playing games. So you may have not considered the idea of going out and making one. If you are, there is a program available at Full Sail University, be it art, animation, story creation, or even producing games. That game degree program is there. And actually, just recently, I was given a list of various games that graduates have worked on that would include just about every single Assassin's Creed game. A computer animation graduate contributed to Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. There is a connection that happens with other game developers out there once you graduate from the program. If you would like to learn more, please go to fullsail.edu/address, and you can learn more all there. There you go. Thank you very much, Full Sail. But really, thank you so much, our panel, and everyone who took the time out at the very last minute to make this happen. This has been Address the Sess. We're going to do this again next week, slightly shorter, slightly different, assuming that like media companies and the internet just kind of keep it chill as we get into the holiday. Be safe, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.